I've talked a lot about the Aimpoint Comp M4S in passing in my videos, but I've never actually done a full review on this guy we have right here. This has been an excellent red dot that I've really liked a lot, and I wanted to give a little more background on it. What's the use case? If you're in the market for one, should you kind of, consider it, and all those kinds of details. And so let's go over that today. So let's talk generally first about what a red dot or who red dots are meant for. So red dots are unmagnified optics, and they make your aiming much simpler and much cleaner than, let's say, your iron sights, which I still think are good fundamentals to have. But you use red dots because you want to make target acquisition and just overall aiming easier for you. But because red dots aren't magnified, you typically use them in distances which are closer in. I shoot this personally just at 50 yards and maybe 100 yards are in, but if you have the skill, you can do more. It's just not the intended distance that this optic was designed to use it. So that's just red dots in general. Simpler aiming methods for closer in distances. Now, Aimpoint in general is known for doing, having business with the military, so that speaks to some kind of reputation and durability as well. For me, my experience is only really shooting this on the weekends in very controlled environments at the range, just a normal dude who likes to shoot. If you have the budget for this, which is about $800, it's not cheap. But if you want something that is very durable, has an excellent track record, and then is, has a very long battery life, and you want a very simple minimalist type of reticle, then this is an excellent choice to look at. However, if you want something smaller and a little cheaper, and also if you don't want just a plain red dot, but you like something like a holographic or like an EOTECH kind of reticle, then this wouldn't be something to consider. Personally, I think if you're just shooting at the range on the weekends, which is exactly what I do, I don't think the Aimpoint Comp M4S is actually a necessary type of product to have, but you sure will be happy with it. That's how I'll put it. So let's take a look at the Aimpoint Comp M4S. Now, I won't talk throughout this entire overhead section, but I did also want to devote some time to just giving you a general overview of what the Comp M4S looks like. So you can see here it is a nice sleek black. It's not overly reflective, but it's not the most matte thing out there. But it's definitely not going to cause any reflections. You can see here I have it on a quick release mount. This is the ADM mount, American Defense Manufacturing. Good track record in terms of reviews and reliability. Affordable price. Then I actually intentionally wanted a QD lever because I did switch this optic a lot between different guns, but now it's sitting mostly in this Mark 18 inspired clone like you see here. Can we take a moment to just appreciate the Riz2 rail and how sexy the gun looks, in my opinion. Fishing for compliments here. Really like this gun. Because it's shorter, it's a 10.5 inch barrel, not a 10.3. So, I'm being sacrilegious. I find it's very nice and easy to maneuver, very comfortable to shoot, really short, and it feels like just a natural extension of me when I'm shooting this gun. And so it pairs really well with the red dot, especially this Comp M4S. We have the SureFire light up here if I ever need to illuminate anything. We have the broom handle. This is actually P&S Products vertical grip, not Knight's Armament, because P&S costs like 3 times less, but it still is great. And so overall, it's a great, nice, light, compact setup. I use electrical tape to cover up a lot of the logos, which is just a personal preference thing. I just don't want my gun to be a billboard. And so you can see I did that here. And as for the Aimpoint, back to that itself, you can see it has knobs that make it adjustable for windage and elevation. Once you take these caps off, then you can actually make your adjustments. It's a nice way to keep them protected. Now, one thing you can probably note, especially if you're coming from or at least are aware of something like Aimpoint T2s or any kind of other smaller optics, is that, as I've mentioned a few times, is that this is a big optic. It's not small and it takes up a decent amount of rail space. I personally think aesthetically that looks good, but I like the chunkiness of it. It makes me feel like I have something very durable or whatnot. Does size necessarily relate to the durability of it? Maybe a little bit, but I'm mostly just throwing out there that this is not the smallest optic out there in the market. Also, you can see here down the side picture, you can see the red dot in the middle. You can see it's literally just a red dot, as the name of the optic would suggest. And I like how simple this is. This personally is something that I intentionally wanted. I've tried different optics like the EOTECH EXPS2 and whatnot, but I found that just having one red dot in the middle works best for me. I think this is a subjective thing. I do also appreciate the knurling that's on the battery compartment for those few times that you do need to change this, and the actual brightness adjuster itself, which is powered by the battery, is a very tactile and audible click. Some other cool facts about the Aimpoint Comp M4S is that it has 80,000 hours, or which is considered to be over 8 years of constant operation at a certain brightness setting. I find that if I'm shooting this in direct sunlight, I am actually shooting this at basically the maximum brightness setting, maybe 1 or 2 clicks below. So that 80,000 hours is probably not going to actually be 80,000, but you know, it's still going to be a heck of a lot. The dot is 2 MOA, which is great. 7 night compatible, several night vision compatible settings with 9 daylight settings. It weighs just under 10 ounces. That's submersible up to 150 feet or 45 meters. Many of these things are things that I don't need. But you know, so it's definitely overkill for someone like me who just shoots in the weekend, but it is, you know, you will never be disappointed if you have this red dot, that's for sure. Now, when you're choosing what optic to buy, like this red dot or any others, I think it's a good idea to really think through first, what optic or what rifle are you going to put this optic on? I like to match my optics to the intended setup of my rifles. Now, if you only have one gun, you know, this isn't really, you know, that much of a big deal to you. But if you have several rifles or if you plan to build one, you need to kind of take this into consideration, in my opinion. So what I mean by this is, because the red dot is supposed to be shot within shorter distances, I have it set up on a gun that is also designed to be shot at shorter distances. This is not a hard, fast rule. This is a suggestion and a rule of thumb. A lot of it varies based on what you have and frankly also your skill as well. It's not like putting an unmagnified optic on a 20-inch barreled M16 is going to be bad, because as you all know, the M16 has been shot for so many years with just iron sights. But my point is, try to match your optic's intended use with also the setup of your rifle, just to make things a little easier for you. So for me, I put this Aimpoint Comp M4S on my MK18 inspired clone. This is a 10.5-inch barrel, so it's not exactly clone correct, but I don't mind. But the point is that I have a much shorter gun. And so, you know, that really complements the fact that, you know, I'm shooting with an Aimpoint or a red dot, which is also supposed to be shot within shorter distances. Because it's shorter, it's easier to maneuver. I probably am going to use this for something, at least for me, like a home defense kind of thing. And so if I have an unmagnified optic on a shorter gun, which is easier to move around and just, you know, overall easier to handle in closer distances and closer quarters, it's just going to make my life a lot easier. Now, again, you can obviously put this on something like a 14.5-inch barrel beyond, which I have actually done with this M4S a lot. I used to set in my M4A1 clone. But, you know, again, shorter gun, shorter distance optic, I find that to be like the perfect setup for me. When you buy this optic, it comes with Aimpoint's QRP2 mount, which is an absolute co-witness mount. And basically, co-witness refers to how it lines up with any iron sights that you have on the gun already. Now, I think if you have flip down sights, or, you know, the ones that pop up, you know, this might not matter as much, because at least if you're anything like me, you don't actually shoot with both your iron sights up and your optic as well, but you absolutely can, and it's still common. I personally like to use a lower 1/3 co-witness, which basically means your iron sights will sit at the bottom third of your sight picture. And I like this because, you know, it keeps my sight picture as clean as possible if I ever have to use backup iron sights, which frankly I've never had to. The paper targets or the steel targets of the range have never shot back, but just in case they do, I have them on there. It's really just to look cool for that clone correct vibe, really. But my point being, you can choose between different kind of ways to align your iron sights with your red dots. Some pretty common ones are an absolute co-witness or a lower 1/3, and there are others. I choose lower 1/3 because if I do for some reason have to have my iron sights, you know, popped up while my optic is on there, I can still have just the reticle itself and my iron sights aren't in my way. I'm also going to throw in some footage of what the EOTECH EXPS2-0 looks like. The reason I'm doing this is because this is a very popular alternative to Aimpoint red dots. So here you can see this is a holographic sight with that famous donut of death. People like this, they find it to be intuitive or at least easier for target acquisition because you have the bigger donut, so you can just generally say, all right, my target here is within the donut, like shoot. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered on the red dot. Whereas something like an Aimpoint, you know, this M4S, because it only has the red dot, people feel like they must have the red dot always superimposed on the red dot. So it's a thing about target acquisition. Personally though, I've used both. I just find the red dot to be simpler. Another thing to note between the two is also field of view between the EOTECH's window and then also the Aimpoints, and also you have square versus circular. All of these things in my opinion are really personal preference. I don't think there is one which is killer and so much better than the other. I really think it just depends, what do you like, and once you figure it out, pick it and get good with it. That's really about it. So let's talk about what I like about the Aimpoint. As I mentioned, battery life, durability, and simplicity of the reticle and overall sight picture. Those are the three things that I really like. Having the battery compartment being lower, I think is really good for a field of view standpoint, and it looks cool too. Also having a very simple reticle. I personally have just found that the simple red dot on the red dot is my favorite. I like that more than the holographic sights, Donut of Death and the EOTECH. But that again is personal preference. I watched a few other reviews on the M4S and I've heard it be called boringly reliable, and I would say that is a very accurate and a positive, it's not a condescending description at all. You want an optic really, no matter what kind of magnification or use case, that you can always rely on and you don't have to question whether, oh, is it gonna work today? How do I feel about it? You want something you can just point and shoot. And for me, based on all these factors, I think the M4S is exactly that. It's always there. I know it's just part of my gun that's always going to work, and so it's great. Practically and psychologically as well, I feel like it's an excellent choice for me. Now, with that in mind, what are some things that I don't like about this optic? The biggest thing that I don't like, which was entirely within my control, is the price. I chose to pay $800 for this, knowing how much it would cost. I splurged a bit. Buy once, cry once is how I went for this, because if I have this optic on, a gun that I'd use to defend myself, yeah, I want kind of the best. That was my justification to get it. I think it looks cool. Honestly, I think, jokes aside, something like an Aimpoint Pro for me would have been fine. It would have been absolutely perfect. But I also wanted to get this because, I wanted to spend my money on it. And so the biggest thing really would be the price. At $800, this is not the cheapest out there. You can get many other optics which perform very well for cheaper as well. So something to keep in mind. It's completely within your control. Just throwing it out there. So overall, would I recommend this optic? If you want something which is known to be very durable, comes from a manufacturer with a great track record as well, the ability to have an optic will be constantly on with a really great battery life, and you like the simplicity of the sight picture from the reticle and the battery compartment standpoint, and you don't mind paying a pretty penny, absolutely. Hell yeah, I love this optic. It's my favorite of all the ones they have on here. However, if you want an optic which is more affordable, has a different sight picture, both in terms of the battery compartment and actually the reticle, not just being an actual red dot in the middle, and then you also want an optic which is not so large, no, this wouldn't be a good choice for you. This is a big optic, plus everything else that I mentioned. And so I think you may be disappointed to spend so much only to realize it's not what you want. So I will wrap up the video here. Hope this was insightful. Talked about this optic a lot, but I realized optic a lot. Need more coffee. But realized I never actually did an actual review on it as well, throughout the years or whatever. So wanted to share. Hopefully this gives you some good information. It's a really great optic, so I'd check it out if it's something, that fits the bill for you. But if not, there are plenty of other options out there. So hope you enjoyed. Catch you guys in the next one.